So right now, primarily, there's the Solana Labs validator client. And if there's a bug in that code, guess what? The network has reliability issues. Now, there's a new team called Anza, which has spun out of Solana Labs. They're working on their own validator client. And of course, you've got Jump. So when you start to have 3 different validator clients for Solana's network, you are reducing that kind of single point of failure in the network, because the odds of a, call it a P0 or supercritical bug to exist in all 3 code bases is possible, but highly unlikely. And so not only do we get the boost of, say, 1 million TPS, discounted by 50%, 500,000 TPS, whatever it is, you also have now strengthened the reliability of the network by adding additional clients to build a more diverse client set. So this is a 1-2 punch that, again, to your point, I don't think people are really paying attention to, which is as we start to kind of ramp up into what we believe will be tokenized trading of damn near anything at this point. It's going to happen on a chain like Solana, and it's going to be using clients like Firedancer from Jump.
Enjoy this clip? Well, come and join me on The Journeyman, my YouTube channel. Subscribe there for more of this as soon as it comes out. I'll see you there.
Yeah, but it also feels that this cycle will be the hype for that. So let's say Firedancer's out towards the end of the year. 2025 is the hype about what they're going to use Firedancer for. But, as you know, the securities industry takes a very long time to get going. They've all looked at it, right? NASDAQ, London Stock Exchange, all of the groups have looked at it. But the issue is it just takes time for them to do it. And they're fearful over their own business models. So let's see whether the centralized exchanges in crypto do it first. It feels that, yes, there might be some implementation next year.
One thing to note, and I agree with you, the incumbents like the London Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, et cetera, will probably take longer to start to adopt this technology. That makes total sense. They're incumbents with less upside, if you will, in adopting a new technology. And the centralized exchanges are doing the dance between regulators and maintaining happiness with them and harmony, if you will. But there's this whole other section of crypto, particularly in Solana, that isn't beholden to either of those things. And that's the things that are truly decentralized. So for example, I'm friends with the founder of Jupiter, which is a decentralized exchange on Solana. He has and is building a plan to enable trading of literally anything on Jupiter on Solana. And so whether it's the London Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, et cetera, whether it's your Coinbases and sort of Krakens of the world, or it's things that are happening in a decentralized on-chain version, this is the direction of where this stuff is heading. And we're already seeing some folks, with the dipping the toe in the waters of tokenizing, real world assets to some extent here and there. And I'm non-consensus here. I think the banks are probably going to win that game. But as it relates to something that's happening with Jupiter and their ambitious plans of, really trying to bring any asset to be tradable on Solana on chain, that's happening. And irrespective of what happens in the regulatory environment or incumbents that kind of have, an advantage, if users and traders start moving flow to something like Jupiter to be trading tokenized stocks, tokenized bonds, whatever it may be, I think people are going to have to pay attention a lot sooner than later.
Before we get onto the more cultural stuff and memes and other bits and pieces, I want just to pick your brains on other layer 2s, layer 1s, Cosmos, Move stuff. Where somebody's going to be another breakout of this market, right? It's going to be, remember last time around, it was Solana, Avalanche, Polygon, right? I don't know who's your money on, or who are you observing from that race? Doesn't necessarily mean needs to be your bet. It's too early, I think, to take that bet. You don't really see yet, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have an investment in an application-specific chain called SEI, SEI. One of the reasons we did the investment is it's a chain that is literally designed for trading. We're traders. This seems like a no-brainer, right? Now, it uses Tendermint, which is kind of Cosmos related, if you will. But it's a very specific chain. So you have to bridge over. There's all of these other kind of UX challenges. How do they bring liquidity to the chain, et cetera? But The point with something like Say is it follows a similar pattern as it relates to Solana. It's parallelized, and they in fact shipped the first parallelized EVM client, so folks can run their code, their EVM code on Say in a parallelized fashion. The challenge with a lot of the parallelized EVM bets, if you will, that are coming out. I know Monad is another one. That's a super smart team, ex-Jump trading guys. I think they'll be successful. But I think one of the challenges, genuinely misunderstood here, is that there's this kind of optimistic versus deterministic parallelism. And let me break that down in normal terms for what that means. So in Solana, for example, as an application developer, I have to identify in advance, a priori, as a developer, what parts of the global state do I need to change when a transaction is executed against my application, aka program. That is a form of determinism. Deterministically, these are the things that need to be touched in the global state. So let's parallelize the ones that we can, and the other ones need to be serial. That's fine. In parallelized EVM world, the best case scenario can only be as good as deterministic. And let me break down what I mean. What happens at the application level, the developer doesn't determine in advance what parts of the state need to be touched. It's the virtual machine, the engine, if you will, of the chain, right? And what it does is it goes, hey, I'm going to kind of guess that these three things don't need to touch each other's state so they can be parallelized. And if that guess is correct, awesome. You're as good as deterministic parallelization like Solana. But in the case that you're wrong, guess what? You have to start all over again. So part of the challenge that I see with a lot of the kind of parallelized EVM narrative is that you could probably add some boost to existing Ethereum applications, and I think that's great, candidly, but it will never be as good as deterministic parallelization. Now, that aside, let's talk about Move, the Move language chains like Aptos and Sweet. These are heavily financially backed L1s. Move is a programming language literally designed for smart contract and scarce assets and transfers, this type of thing. And so a lot of the we call them in programming foot guns or like traps that you can fall into with writing certain smart contract code. They tend to kind of alleviate just at the programming language level. And that's very powerful, right? The problem, or challenge, I should say, not a problem, is that in technology with developers, and again, this just goes back to some of my experience tracking these communities, developers rarely like to shift to a new programming language as like their full-time job, right? Like it's the 10x user improvement thing, right? If I go to work every day and I write JavaScript or I write C++, like that's what I do. Until my paycheck depends on it, I'm not really learning a new programming language. I want to go to my kid's soccer game at nights and get my bonus at the end of the year, right? Move is a brand new programming language, just like Solidity for Ethereum was a brand new programming language. Now you have to have developers learn a new language. That's not that difficult, but more importantly, you have to build tooling, best practices, all of the kind of infrastructure to support these developers. That's a lot of work. And so one of the challenges that I see with a lot of these newer L1s that have, amazing performance characteristics is what's your developer go-to-market? Because what you're saying is, hey, you're a Rust developer, you've been a Rust developer for years, you can write on Solana. No, come over here and learn this new programming language that's untested, that doesn't have nearly the tooling and infrastructure that's existed for 15 years, and build on our chain. And there is a path to improving that. I just don't see it currently. Is it a solvable problem? Absolutely. Do you solve it with money? No. And I think this is another problem that a lot of these projects make. They think, oh, we raise a ton of money from VCs, we issue a token, we have all this money in the treasury, we'll just issue grants. Guess what? The largest software company on the planet did this during the mobile boom. They're called Microsoft. They paid developers to build Windows mobile phone apps. How many of those apps are being used today? 0. Right? And so when you pay to play a developer, you're not tapping into the incentives that actually drive them. What drives developers is they want to build stuff. That's actually what drives most developers. It's rarely a financial outcome. Getting paid well is good. developers are probably the highest paid people on the planet right now, right? So they're going to get that anyway. I do think that if the MoveLang chains or these other L1s that are bringing high throughput and highly performant characteristics to blockchain can improve their developer go-to-market, then they actually have a shot at kind of getting some of that developer mindshare and people building breakout applications on their